Good morning, and thank you for being here. I'm going to talk about wild boar. I'll be talking about wild boar and feral pigs, same species. And I'm going to present the work that started with a simple question. We know that fertility control, we know that some contraceptives like gonocon work very well on wild boar. Can we scale it up to population level? And can we envisage the possibility of using fertility control on its own or in addition to culling for the species? And just to put things in context for those of you that don't know much about wild boar and feral pigs, here are some facts. Wild boar are Eurasian, so they're everywhere now in Eurasia. It's just a blanket of wild boar in Italy, in Europe. But they're also growing. They've grown in the States, they've grown in Australia, they've grown everywhere. And just to give you an idea on how big this growth is, this is some work that we did with some colleagues, European colleagues, 17 European colleagues, 17 countries. On the y-axis, there's the number of wild boar culled per year in the last 30 years. And as you can see, it's growing, and it's growing amazingly so. If you look at the bottom one, bottom right, sorry, Poland, France, Germany, in 2013, we're culling between 200,000 and 600,000 wild boar. Last year, Germany is the size of Texas. Last year, Germany culled 800,000 wild boar. So, big numbers. As many people has already mentioned in this conference, the main cause of mortality for wild boar everywhere in the world is now flat. So hunters are either not increasing or declining. So we have this discrepancy between these numbers of the animals going through the roofs and the hunters that were the main had the main impact on wild boar and feral pigs that are not going anywhere. In fact, they are decreasing. Why do we care? Because of all the species, of all the wildlife I can think about, wild boar ticks every single human-wildlife conflict. So I've just mentioned the main one there. And just to give you an idea of the extent, you might know that African swine fever is now in Europe and in China. Removing African swine fever from a country might cost billions. We're talking about billions of dollars because to make a state free of this disease, and certainly hits the economy, the pig industry very, very badly because it blocks the exports for pork. Environmental impact, wild boar could be considered ecosystem engineers because they do have a significant impact everywhere they root. They eat anything that doesn't run fast enough to not be eaten. So they're really, really something. There are also lots of people that love wild boar. They're cute, which helps to be liked. There are wild boar everywhere. There are wild boar on beaches. In Italy, where I come from, people are finding wild boar swimming in their swimming pools. There are wild boar in towns everywhere now. But they're also a very important source of income for some countries because of the hunting lobby, for the hunting groups. So, an important species, and its importance is growing worldwide. Methods to manage them, the traditional ones, so recreational ground hunting, culling from helicopter, or professional shooters. Toxicants are another method, and more people are asking for fertility control. Just as a bracket here, a lot of people that ask for fertility control fall in love with the idea because they don't know what they're asking for. They have this idea that you give them the pill and that's it, as I was mentioning before. If we look about managing wild boar in Europe, some of these methods we can discard. Certainly culling from helicopters. If you try to cull wild boar from helicopters in Italy, the chances are that you are killing some people, because it's we are too overcrowded. Likewise, toxicants. There are toxicants that have been developed in Australia. They're now tested in the US. They will never come to Europe, because Europe is phasing out toxicants for wildlife in general. So that's not a way to go. So the last two methods that really remain are fertility control and culling. There has been several studies on the effect of fertility control and culling on many species, and this is the most notable one, and a very good one, by Pepin et al., in fact from Fort Collins, here at the National Wildlife Research Center. The main conclusion on pigs is that if you maintain about 40% of the population infertile, in both isolated population and open population, you can speed up population reduction due to culling. So compared to culling alone, adding fertility control makes sense. This work was based on data, if I quote correctly. These were data from animals that have been culled, but not necessarily from animals that have been counted. So we took a similar approach and we developed a model. The main question was, if we apply fertility control and culling in different proportions, what would be the outcome on population size? And we were lucky because we had two study areas, one in Italy and one in the UK. On both study areas we had data on the number of animals. We had data on the number of animals that had been removed from the system. They were both similar size. They both have, on average, 2,000 wild boar, and both wanted to reduce the local population to 400. This is one of these areas, so you can see that the number of animals that have been estimated through distance sampling and market capture was fluctuating around 2,000 animals. And about 30% were removed by the hunters every year. So the result of the model, I'm not a modeler, so the results of the model are complicated, so I'm trying to cut it down in 3 slides. You will see a very complicated slide with all the possible combinations. Just to give you an insight in what the combination means and what each square means. On the x-axis, you have the time. We ran the model for 20 years. On the y-axis is the log transform number of wild boar. The red line is the target. We want to reach 400 animals. And the black line is how long it will take. So we start from 2,000, and where the black line meets the red line, it means that we have reached our target of 400. So that's a complicated slide. So from left to right, you have increasing amount of contraception. From top to bottom, you have increasing proportion of culling. Obviously, don't look at all of these, but if you just focus on the first line, you can see that, at least according to the model, the black line never reach the red. So fertility control doesn't seem, at least in these situations, to decrease the numbers to the target that we want. As you go further and further towards this area, you can see that a combination of the two methods work. So I'll zoom in on one of these, which makes more sense, and I've taken the most sensible option, which is if we cull 40% of the population, that we know is possible, and we increase the proportion of animals contracepted, we can reach the reduction of animals within a few years. However, think about us as being very ambitious in wanting to decrease the population to 400. If we were less ambitious and we wanted to halve the population, of course it will take fewer years. So the take-home message from this is that if we cull 40% of these populations, we can maintain the population where it is, stable. If we add 20% conception, we can achieve 400 boar in 18 years, or 1,000 boar in 3 years. And then it gets faster if you add the proportion of animals contracepted. So the conclusion from the model, fertility control alone is incapable of reducing wild boar numbers, as others found. However, adding fertility control to feasible, and feasible should be highlighted, levels of culling can reduce population faster than culling alone. So this is encouraging. It's even more encouraging if you think about the third dimension that we haven't considered yet, which is the cost. I'm starting to think that the cost of using fertility control, particularly if you use volunteers, will be probably comparable or much lower than culling. So we are now exploring the cost of culling alone versus culling and using fertility control. We would like to use fertility control with an oral contraceptive. We are working on it. Doug Eckery group and my group are collaborating on this. If we ever and when we have an oral contraceptive, we already have the means to deliver it to the wild boar, and I hope this works. It doesn't seem to work. Why does it seem to work? I'll try. Yeah. Okay. So this is the BOSS, the boar operated system, and it works very well. We invented it, so I'm very proud of it. Some people are worried about the fact that it now falls on the head of the piglets. They don't care, they keep eating. So if you put some bait in it that will contain the oral contraceptive, you can reach a very high proportion of the wild boar population. And we know that you can reach a very high proportion because trials have been carried out with classical swine fever vaccine, and you know that you can reach a very high proportion. So whenever people ask me when should we use fertility control, or should we be using fertility control for wild boar or a number of other species, my answer is where little control is any of these: illegal, unacceptable, unfeasible, unsustainable, environmental hazardous, or ineffective when used on its own. Ineffective when is the sole method of management. We are now involved in two projects, one not so far from Barcelona in Spain, and another one in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is full of wild boar, and wild boar cannot be killed, which is amazing to me. And so we are working with Doug on these two projects to see whether the feasibility of delivering fertility control to wild boar. Also, I've been contacted by French hunters that are interested in the method, which to me, again, was a revelation, but it's good because it means that hunters also are recognizing that this is something that they should be thinking about. So I would like to acknowledge the help of the Botstiber Institute for not only for bringing me here, but for this amazing work that they're doing in making sure, in educating people on fertility control. And thank you very much for listening.